and welcome to Hawks on the Wire, brought to you by Three Hawks Haven, easily found on our website, threehawkshaven.com. I am your host, Joan, and soon I will be introducing you to our guest, but first I want to say that we only expect our guests to share what they are comfortable sharing. Also, we want to make this a safe environment for our guest. We do not judge in any way. It is our goal to share as many life experiences as we can and as many different perspectives as we can so we can all learn. We are so appreciative of our guests willing to share. And with that said, I want to welcome Lisa Cooper Ellison. Hi, Lisa. How are you doing today?
Hi, Joan. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for
Oh,
having me on.
oh, you're welcome. Thank you, beautiful girl. And I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Yeah, so I am a writer, editor, and writing coach, and I live in Charlottesville, Virginia. I write a variety of different things: essays, books, memoir. I do some poetry. And professionally, I edit manuscripts for other writers, and I also teach writing classes. So if you're interested in learning about that, you can just go to my website, which is lisacooperellison.com. I also have a background in mindfulness and mental health. And before I chose to work as a writer, I was a trauma therapist. I also love nature, playing with my two kitties, Miss Foxy and Miss Kitten. And I love to cook with my husband, Mark.
Well, that is wonderful. Thank you. You are just an amazing girl. Thank you so much. Now, what would we want you to tell us what you would like to describe about the life experience you want to talk about today?
Yeah, so what I'm going to talk about is my brother's suicide. My brother Joe died by suicide in 1997 during the middle of a mental health crisis. He was 20 at the time when he died, and I was 22. And this was a public event, so it wasn't something that my family could hide from. It even ended up on the Sunday edition of our newspaper. So it was actually on the front page. Um, at the time it happened, it shattered my view of my brother, of my family, of who I was. And the pain felt like someone was slicing through me. I just wasn't sure how I was going to be able to go on sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I missed my brother so much. At one point, he was like a second limb, and I struggled to understand what had happened. And the trauma of this experience led to nightmares, deep depression, and bouts of anxiety because the world I'd known and come to rely on was gone.
Mm. Very traumatic, very shocking. You and your brother had grown up all through as children together, correct?
Oh yeah, he had a twin, and
Mm-hmm.
so the three of us were like the three musketeers. And in fact, when we were really little, we shared a best friend.
Oh, you shared a best friend. And who was the best
Yeah.
friend?
Well, the best friend's name was Bobby Coughlin, and we had all kinds of adventures growing up together with him.
Yes, very good. So some good memories there.
Absolutely.
Well, how did you cope after Joe's suicide, and was there someone there that helped you the most or a resource there that really helped you?
You know, despite the challenges of this experience, I was incredibly blessed. A woman named Wendy came to my brother's funeral. She had heard about it through the news, and her son had died by suicide 2 years earlier.
Mm.
And so I'd never met her before, but she came to the funeral and she just gave me the biggest hug. And when she was holding on to me, she whispered in my ear, "You will smile again." And then she
Oh.
pulled back and she smiled. And it brings tears to my eyes now to
Mm-hmm.
think about that. Because, during the darkest times, I would think of Wendy and the fact that she was walking this path too. And the fact that I wasn't alone, that other people were doing this and that I could heal. I also had a best friend, Becky, whom I love dearly. We had known each other since we were 10. And, it's hard for a lot of people to know what to do when something like this happened.
Yes.
And she just sat next to me, and every once in a while she'd just say, "I'm here."
Mm-hmm.
And that was just the greatest gift, just to know that someone else was there. And so, those were two things that happened early on. But, in order to cope, I knew deep in my bones that this was a huge story for me. And so I wrote about it. And each time I would tell versions of the story, I would heal a little bit more, and it would make a little bit more sense to me, in terms of what happened and what my role was, and what was going on with my brother. And so, at the darkest points, really early on, I went to Survivors of Suicide Loss, which is a support group for family members who have someone who's died by suicide. And that was incredibly helpful to me because, there's a lot of details that go on when someone dies by suicide that you just can't go off and tell everyone.
Yes.
And the people that were there understood. And again, it was a place where I saw people who were going through the same thing that I'd gone through, but they were farther along. And again, it gave me the faith that healing was possible.
Very good. So between Wendy and Becky and this support group over the years, and your journaling, your writing, it really did help.
Absolutely. And also I had my own therapist. So I worked with a counselor. And I think that's really important for people to know because, when my brother died, I was living in Louisville, Kentucky, and he was in upstate New York. And I was alone when I got that call. But, I didn't have to heal alone. And no one needs to heal alone. You deserve to have someone walk that journey with you. And I'm so grateful that I was able to have that.
Absolutely. Very good. Is there anything else you would like to tell the listeners that you think might help them? You've been very helpful with your talk so far, but anything else?
Yeah, there's a few things that I'd like people to know. One, there's no timetable for healing. We often think we have to be cured of grief, that we have to get over grief. You don't. The grief is going to go away on its own timetable, but it's never going to be completely gone. And that is okay. The grief that you feel is equal to the love you shared in that relationship. And whenever you hurt, that's a reminder that that person was important to you and that relationship was important and alive in your life. And so it's important to just honor that feeling when it comes up. And, my brother died 24 years ago, and I still have waves of grief that will come over me sometimes. And I've learned, just let the feeling happen and it'll pass. So it's really important to feel your feelings. And guilt is one of the most common feelings that happens when people die by suicide. I, like other people in my family, I believed it was my fault, that I was the reason my brother died, that I'd done something wrong, and if I'd just done something right, he wouldn't have died. But 15 years after my brother died, I was trained by the Virginia Speakers Bureau to be able to speak about suicide. And one of the things that happened when I was telling my story is I shared this statistic, and it made all the difference. So this is from the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. And the statistic is that 90% of people who die by suicide have an untreated mental illness. So my brother's death wasn't caused by a feeling of someone in our family. It was caused by the deep depression that he had experienced.
Yes.
And it wasn't our faults. And so what I would say to any listener is that look at yourself in the mirror and say that statistic. 90% of people who die by suicide do so because of an untreated mental illness. It is not my fault. And the other thing that I would say is that, when someone dies by suicide, it can be really common for people to focus on that death and the way the person died and the pain and the grief. But that was just one moment in that person's life. And everyone is made up of a number of different moments. And so it's important to not sugarcoat what happened, to really understand what happened because you want to tell an honest story about that person's life, but also to focus on the good times and to remember the generous things that person did and all of the acts of kindness, because those are there too, and it's important to do that. And when you remember those good times, you keep that person alive in your heart and also in your family.
I love that. That is beautiful. Thank you so much. And that's such a positive way to look back on that person's life, huh?
Oh, absolutely. And it's so important. I mean, I talk about my brother. He's been gone for 24 years, but in our family, he is still alive because we talk about him.
Very good. Well, thank you, Lisa, so much. I so appreciate you talking with us today.
It's my absolute pleasure, Joan. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you are amazing, and thank you. And to all our Hawks on the Wire listeners, it is our hope that this will help you in some way, a big way or a small way. And remember, when you hear a Hawk's call, Do what we do. Stop and think of somebody you know and send them a bunch of love.